Okay, good evening. For the 60 plus people we have on Zoom, and the 40 plus we have here at the great Normandie Farm Restaurant in Potomac, Maryland. Welcome back. And a very happy Groundhog Day to everyone. I started my day in the beautiful city of Puxatawny, Pennsylvania this morning. So February's favorite Phil had his moment of fame for the year. I think the only people who are happy about 6 weeks of more winter is Pepco in Montgomery County. But we'll adapt and overcome. So we hope that 2022 is the year that normal comes back, or at least the new normal. So we look forward to giving you a great calendar year. January with the first Wednesday of the month being the first Wednesday back at work. We wanted to at least give you a break. So we'll be seeing you monthly from here on out. Mr. Geis and Mr. Edry are going to continue the $10 dinners. So bring a friend. You may have to pay for your friend, but bring a friend. And a special thank you to everyone who registered for the Project Management Day of Service. That registration ended yesterday. A great event that the last few years with the pandemic have been virtual, but they look forward to coming back to the University of Maryland Student Union next year. Okay, so starting next month, our leaders at the head table will be switching roles. Mr. Edry will start his 2-year tenure as the president of our chapter, and then Mr. Geis will support him as the VP of Finance. If you see yourself in those 2 blue squares, talk to us afterwards. We're currently accepting volunteers for the VP of Communication and the co-VP of Programs to help Dr. Chen get great speakers like we have with Arnold this evening. PMI Global is coming out of the gate with a free event in March. So Thursday, 24 March, the PMX PO. So a full day of speakers, some podcast hosts, some authors, some leaders in PMI Global, including the PMI CIO or CEO. Opportunity for 10 plus PDUs to be earned, and you'll have on-demand access to that into 2023. So a good way to start on the PDU wagon for the new year. Citizen development is a big buzzword right now of learning software as a service programs and becoming a developer within your own environments through Salesforce, ServiceNow, Oracle Human Capital Management Cloud. So project managers are allowed to get their hands a little bit more dirty and be on the development side if you've had that itch. So PMI sees that's a way that project management is being done now, is taking on that more tactical, operational, hands-on role. So they're offering a citizen development program with a foundation class and a micro-credential. There is a small cost to it, but as a PMI member, you have download access to a 200-page citizen development handbook. So even if you wanted to look in the handbook and see, maybe this is for me, maybe my company or organization could use a citizen development program, and where you come in is kind of writing that strategy and framework of what would fit your company. So a good thing to potentially dive into in 2022. Big congratulations out of the gate in 2022. A few of our fellow members set a goal to earn their PMP, and they did. So special congratulations to them. And we look forward to what they'll do next and potentially become speakers for our chapter going forward. Our education partners are doing amazing things out of the gate. Still a large virtual presence, but some are starting to do face-to-face education classes again. So If your company has a training education allowance for the new year, don't waste it. It's a good way to earn PDUs. It's a good way to get a couple acronyms or letters after your name or on your LinkedIn profile or business card for those who still have those. So always take advantage of every opportunity you get. And we're very happy to welcome back Mr. Arnold Sanow for our third time as a PMI Montgomery County speaker. He has over 40 years of educating the masses. For those who have seen him speak to our chapter before, his personable and powerful communication touch is unique and top-notch among all his speaking peers in the area. He is author of 7 books. He has a couple for show and tell here today. Most are downloadable as ebooks on Kindle and Amazon app, so take a look. And of all the speakers we've had in our 18+ history as a chapter, he is the best ski patroller ever to grace our stage. And he'll let you know what a ski patroller is, because I had to Google what's a ski patroller before I put this in. So please bear with us for about 90 seconds as we transition, and we welcome Arnold to and thank him for his time, and looking forward to a great program.
Okay, good evening again. For a little part of the site. How many people, just for curiosity, how many of you are morning? How many are afternoon? How many are evening? 5 of you. How many are none of the above? So at least I know what's going to be awake. First of all, I do appreciate you coming out tonight. I appreciate people on Zoom coming out today. Just hopefully one day everybody will be able to connect. This is what it's about, connect and meet together. And actually, I see Facebook the other day that said actually COVID will be over tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Officially over.
Oops, there we go. Is that right? Okay. Okay. Anyway, since we're talking about talking about connections and building enduring connections with others tonight, and I want to start off with one of the key rules for you as far as building connections goes. And it's interesting because a couple of months ago, I was delivering a speech for actually in Nevada for all the elected officials of Nevada on how to get along together, which was who knows if that's going to work, but anyway. But it was interesting because one of the things we talk about is one of the things I agreed with them was not to talk about politics. Because when you talk about politics, people they become disengaged, they go crazy, they I don't know, they become enraged, they become alienated. So tonight, if it's okay with you, I'm just going to keep it non-controversial and just talk about sex and religion. Is that okay with everyone? I'll just keep. Anyway, moving on. Actually, somebody took me seriously on that one, but I won't do that, I promise. So anyway, in the short time we have today, what I want to do is I want to share some tips, tools, and solutions and sort of get to the point on this, on how to create meaningful relationships and connections by improving really your communication, your interpersonal relationships, and your really ability to get along when it really boils down to it. And whether you're introvert or extrovert, people are wired to want to connect. We all want that connection that are out there. So So to create enduring connections, what I'm going to do tonight is I'm mainly going to focus on communication. And the reason I want to focus specifically on communication is that working with government agencies, companies like yours out there too, I find that over 90% of the problems relate to some kind of communication breakdown. And when I say communication breakdown, this could be misunderstandings, misinformation, miscommunication, mistrust, all the misses out there that you can imagine in there. And the reason this is so important, just to put this in perspective, is that there was a study done by Harvard Stanford University a while ago that said that only 15% of your success in relation to getting things done, into building cooperation, into building relationships, into influencing others is going to be due to your what? Your technical skills, your technical qualities. And 85% will really be due to your communication, your people skills, and your emotional intelligence when you really boil it down to it. And just to put this, I always like a few quotes in here too. And I always like Teddy Roosevelt said, the single most important ingredient for success is knowing how to get along and connect with people if you really deal with it. By the way, how many of you ever seen the show So You Think You Can Dance? Anybody ever seen that one? Were you in it by any chance? No. I just want to, you never know, you might just, but this is where I get all my information. I like the quote by Nigel Lyko. He said, it's not necessarily the best dancers who win, it's what? It's the ones they like the most who can connect with the audience. So it really boils down to it. By the way, I just watch TV and get all this information. You might, everybody else gets it from Harvard Business Review, but anyway, what the heck. And Daniel Goleman, just to put this in perspective a little more, said we are judged by our new yardstick, not only how smart we are by our training records, but also how well we handle ourselves and each other. So it really boils down to you. And to make you aware of this from a workplace perspective, because I do a lot right now, I'm getting a lot of, I work with a lot of companies on retention of employees and stuff, and it really boils down to this, the managers and the stuff like that. And I'll get into that in a little bit, but I always like this quote. I was doing something, anybody ever heard of a company called Agilent Technologies? Anybody ever out in the Silicon Valley? And yeah, and I was a speaker at one of their meetings a few years ago. And you know how I always ask people, how do you connect with people? How do you build relationships? How do you keep people? I'm always asking, the CEO was there and I just asked him for his opinion. Have you ever had somebody give you an opinion and you write it down on a napkin? Anybody ever done that? And then you blow your nose like, I don't want to gross you out. But anyway, I had to get it later. But he said this, and I always like this quote. I had to write it down. I found, said 50% of all our obstacles to success center around team dynamics. And then he basically said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And when you talk about connecting with people, if you talk about communicating with people, it really boils down to and by the way, culture is the attitude and the values and the beliefs that we live and work by. But a good example of this is Whole Foods Market. I don't know if they still do this, but if you apply for a job at Whole Foods and you go to the team, anybody on that team can actually veto you of being on that team because they want people to be within the value systems and the people skills, because again, the people skills are the ones that are going to be a problem. And I always say too, as a leader, are you demonstrating those values and things that people want to hear about at that point? So today what we need to do is we need to take a good look at ourselves, because a lot of people don't see themselves. A lot of us have blind spots. And the reason I say that, has anybody ever taken had a 360 evaluation done on them? You don't look like thrilled with it either. And a 360 evaluation. And I actually do those for a lot of companies, but talking about that, what I mean by that is that's where I was working with a CEO of another company recently, and we interviewed people below him, above him, partners, anybody else. And as soon as I come back with the answers, guess what he says? He says, well, that's not me. Well, that's not me. And my wife wouldn't say that. And they just get it totally wrong in that area. So we have to look at ourselves. And when I talk about not seeing ourselves, a lot of times what we do to get in trouble is inadvertent. So for example, I'm sorry, your name is Cynthia. You always get somebody while they're eating their cake and but let's say Cynthia is my boss. Has it ever happened to you? And you walk down the hall and you say, good morning, Cynthia. And she says nothing. You ever had that happen? And all the time. And there's nothing wrong with Cynthia, but what if I'm her employee? What am I thinking right away? Oh, she hates me and she doesn't like this, and this is and everything's wrong. So a lot of the stuff we do is we got to be aware, self-awareness of what's going on around us. And a lot of people don't do this. One more example of this, I was doing something up for, and I'm just using examples of place I've worked here, but up at Chrysler, and or anybody ever been to Auburn Hills, Michigan? I was working with them up there. And we went out to dinner one night, and I was working with people who ran dealerships. And they were all football players and basketball players. And, you know, these guys are all like 6'8", and I'm 4'3" or something, but it's sort of amazing. But we go in there and we're going to a restaurant and we're having a great time, and they're all yelling and they're screaming and they're having a great time. And then I noticed this, that when I'm looking around the room, people would come and start to sit, and then they what? They'd move away. They'd sit and they move away. And, you know, did I think I was, people probably thought we were rude, but do I think I'm rude? No. Do we think, but what happens is we inadvertently do things that cause other people to do it. And the opposite of rudeness is what? Is awareness, when you really boil it down to it. So you really need to talk about that. And when I emphasize that we don't see ourselves, let me give you another example of this really quickly here. By the way, does anybody want my dessert here? Okay, so I have an extra one.
Were they moving away?
Yeah, they're moving away. What's that? The people in the restaurant didn't want to sit next to us because we're yelling and screaming. And oh yeah, we thought we were just, you know, and we just are totally unaware of what's going on. It's, for example, anybody ever have a new baby and you walk into a restaurant and your baby's screaming and yelling and you're just immune to it, right? But everybody else is hating you. So, you know, you just gotta be aware that other people may not, you know, getting on a plane, exactly, you got it. But to give you an example of how this works, of why we don't see ourselves. Has anybody ever here gone into an elevator and you don't look at anybody in the elevator? Anybody know what I'm talking about? You look at the ceiling and the floor. Anybody? And I was in this elevator a while ago. And just picture this. I'm standing in the elevator. I didn't know anybody was in there. I'm against up on the door like this. And I'll move back because I have to come off here for a second. But I was doing this. I was sitting with my face was on the door. And all of a sudden I start doing this. I start going. I started coughing, and all of a sudden I did not have my hand over my mouth, and all of a sudden this woman in the back screamed at me, and she said, "Didn't your mother teach you when you cough, put your hand over your mouth?" And she yelled at me. Now, what's your first reaction when that happens? You want to knock them out, but I wrote this book called Get Along, so I can't. But anyway, so I immediately calmed down, and I looked her in the eye, and I said, "You know what? I really appreciate you telling me that. Because quite frankly, that's how I got this cough. I don't want to give it to anybody else. And I want to thank you for sharing that." You know what she did? She immediately calmed down. And you know what she said next? She said, "You know what? You are so nice." And she says, when I tell people what I just told you in the nice way that I told you, they start yelling and screaming at me. And you know what she asked me next? She said, "Well, what's their problem?" Now, I didn't have time to pull out these slides and show her because I'm on an elevator, but in her mind, she thought she was talking to me in a nice way. And it's interesting because I do a lot of mediation work too with people who are not getting along with each other. And you know, it's the first thing everybody tells me. And I told her that in a nice way. I said, "Can I hear your nice way?" So just be aware of that because it makes a difference. So keeping the point that we don't see ourselves. I always like this quote right here. It's not always what you say that matters. Sometimes it's what you don't say. And it's also how you're perceived when you really boil it down to it. And we've all heard that term. Everybody's heard the term perception is reality, which is really not true. However, my perception is your reality. And when we talk about connecting with people, how long do you think it takes somebody to make up their mind about you when they first meet you? Yeah, it's like that. It's milliseconds almost. And so then you got to talk your way out of it if you're coming across the wrong way. So you really got to watch that one. And, you know, and the thing is, we got to watch out too, that people make up their minds about us so much. And it goes back to that's not always what you say that matters. Sometimes it's what you don't say. We jump to conclusions on a lot of things, for example. A good example of this, I was doing another seminar, an all-day seminar at one place, and there was a woman in the back who was sleeping. And what goes through my mind right away? Okay, she's disengaged, she's this, I would never hire her, you know, all these things go through my mind. But then I found out later that she was a single mother. She had been up all night. She had a kid with terminal illness. I'm finding all these things out later. And of course, she shouldn't even come to the session. Actually, she would have let her sleep all day. But but your first reaction is that if you knew it, you do that. So sometimes, let people know what's going on with that. And by the way, talking about perceptions, just an example of that. Has anybody ever gone into Target with a red polo shirt on by any chance? Did you make the same mistake I made? That everybody comes up to you, right? Okay. I was in there the other day. I was wearing one of these red polo shirts, and people came up. They said, "You know where this is? You know what?" And after about the third person, you know what? I just started taking them. I didn't say I didn't work there. And then they got excellent reviews for great customer service, and it was me. So anyway, I just said I'm not going to tell them I don't work there anymore. I actually walked them to where they were going. I didn't even know where I was going, but I probably thought it was terrible. But people are wired to make snap judgments, assumptions. We have biases. We mind read things. And by the way, what I mean by mind read, and this is something when we talk about building connections again. For example, anybody ever have somebody, you invite somebody to your house, right, for dinner or drinks or something like that, and then they never invite you. And what's our first reaction? They don't like you, or they thought it was terrible. And it's not necessarily true. It's that they are just maybe not entertainers, or they don't want to invite people. So sometimes we've got to look at those types of aspects of it. And also when we talk about snap judgments and stuff like that, we all have our separate realities and rule books, and we all have our own world view, and we need to understand that a little bit away. And also watch out for those of you, I see this a lot of times with people I work with, their ego gets in the way of them doing something, their pride. And by the way, the reason I'm going over this is take a good look at yourself today and think, is this something that's happening to me or doing it? And one thing hit me one time. I was doing some work for the National Automobile Dealers Association, and I was going to speak at one of their conferences, and I gave my slides talking about ego, and this is where I screwed up, but where I made a big mistake. I go in there and I said, "Here's my slides." And they have a person called an instructional designer, if you're familiar with that term. And she looked at my slides and says, "These aren't that good." And so immediately I'm thinking, okay, I've done 2,500 of these programs, like a good reviews, everything in my mind is going through. And my ego was getting in the way of what? Of actually getting better. And how many of you sometimes see yourself doing that? You don't listen to somebody, or they're a lower level, or they're only a level 3 or a 5 or whatever. And, one time I was working with a park authority, and I said, who you should talk to? The person cutting the grass, when you want to get information, because they're out there every day. So again, take a good look at yourselves. And speaking of ways of getting better, I want to do a little exercise with you. How many of you have read this book, by the way? Good to Great. Anybody ever read that book before? Well, if you haven't read it, you don't have to read. I'll just show you the key point. Key point is good is the enemy of great when you really boil it down to it. And what I'd like to do, and by the way, everyone is good here. I mean, you wouldn't have a job if you weren't good. You probably wouldn't get this meal if you weren't good. Well, you might get the meal for it. But anyway, you wouldn't be here and have a job. So what I'd like to do is, can I have everybody at online? And can I have everybody here just stand up real quick? I'm going to do a quick little exercise. By the way, I'm not doing anything weird here. So just everybody says, who's going to do these stupid, weird exercises? My wife would say, but okay. So what I'd like you to do, I'd like everybody to close your eyes and don't touch anybody, by the way, no touching allowed. Yeah, do not touch people, please. Yeah. Let's move on from there. Moving on. Okay. I'd like everybody to close your eyes, and I want you to with your right hand, I want you to point where you think north is. Okay, everybody doing that? With your right hand, point north. This might be easier for people on Zoom because they live there, but point where you think north is. Now, keeping that hand pointed north, with your left hand, I want you to raise it if you think you're right. So your eyes are closed. Your right hand is pointing north. Your left hand is up if you think you're right. Keep your hands up and open your eyes for a second. Okay, north is straight up. Some of you have. North is this way. North is that way. North is this way, that way, this way. Okay, you can sit down. I have no clue where north is, by the way. So that's not the point. Is it? Well, I don't know. That's how I know it's that one. Yeah, the only way I'm going to trust you if you look at your cell phone. Okay, on that one, you have to look at your cell. Now, everybody, this is where nobody cares what the point is. They just want to know where north is. But I'm trying to give you a point on this, and nobody cares about the point. It's that way. According to the cell phone, it's that way. So I still like the ones who had it right straight up right there. At least there wasn't any down here, though. So anyway. But the point is the problem is we become what? We become sometimes complacent. We think we know everything. We think we're always right on stuff, and gets in the way of having good connections and stuff in that area. And to put that into perspective too, because one of the things that gets in the way of good connections, and I'm going to read this. By the way, I'm going to send a free electronic copy of this book to everybody too at the end of this. So please, where is this? 270. I just want to read you something because I think this would help you a little bit. It's on 270. Well, what's wrong with being right? And if you want to look this up later, it's on page 276. But it says, standing firm on hallowed grounds of rightness is a dead wrong approach for connecting to others. It smacks of arrogance and alienates. The need to be right gets in the way of winning the acceptance, appreciation, and respect of others. Qualities critical to carrying connections, customer satisfaction, and harmony everywhere. Whenever you need to be right, you make others wrong in the process with a polarizing effect that pushes people away. If you find yourself playing the right and wrong game, get out immediately. Remind yourself that you lose by winning. Naturally, you want your beliefs to be validated by others, but not at the price of alienating them. It boils down to this: being right jeopardizes your connections. Would the loss of your colleague or comrade truly be worth a momentary victory in a ridiculous battle of egos? Giving up the need to be right doesn't mean giving up your preferences and perspectives. Rather, it means letting go of demanding that others must or should see things your way. It's respectably disagreeing, but not demanding that others conform to your beliefs, your strengths, your relationship, with a willingness to accept and respect differences. A steadfast insistence on being right can throw you steadily off course with people and the direction you want to head. Being right can be expensive, costing you clients, customers, credibility, and connection. Definitely the wrong approach if you want to keep valued relationships. Instead of being right, do what is right for the integrity of the relationship and demonstrating your intention for creating good connections. So think about that the next time you have to win or something like that. You know, after my 9th divorce, just kidding. I figured it out. But moving on. Just wanted to talk about that. And when we talk about going to get along better and being right, stuff like that, shifting terms here a little bit, I also want you to realize that a lot of the people you deal with, a lot of the way they are based on their formative years. So for example, the people you deal with at office or family or friends, a lot of them get by about the age of 7, they've had their values and beliefs on what their beliefs about life and this and that, based on from their parents, their ministers, their teachers, and all that comes through. And once you realize that everybody is different, I'll tell you, your stress life goes way down. Anybody have people on 2 different political divides here? One, and you get into, you just don't even want to go there anymore. You just don't want to go home. So don't go home. Your wife won't even let. Is that why you're here tonight? Yeah. You didn't want to talk politics. Okay, I got you. That's amazing. Anyway, but what I'm trying to say is you've got to take a good look. I just like to I want to have a stressful-free life as much as I can. But I realize if you realize everybody's coming from a different perspective, different worldviews, people grew up differently, your stress goes way down because that's, you do it. But here's something, once we realize how we were raised, we can change it too. So for example, anybody ever see this on the internet? Kids' views on marriage? Anybody ever catch that? No? Okay. They actually ask little kids. And the reason I'm doing this is to show you that a lot of their values and beliefs, when they're, what they're learning at 6 and 7 and 8, and then later on, I'd like to check them at 25 to see how they're really treating people. But it says, they asked this kid, Alan, who's age 10, they said, how do you decide who to marry? And this is what Alan said: you've got to find somebody who likes the same stuff. Like if you like sports, she should like it that you like sports, and she should keep the chips and dip coming. So, you want this guy's address so your daughter doesn't get mixed up with him? Because when he's 25, you better bring the chips out. Yeah. Here was another one. It said, how do you decide who to marry? And this was Kristen, age 10. And she said, no person really decides before they grow up who they're going to marry. God decides it all the way before, and then you get to find out later who you're stuck with. Anybody have that feeling out there? Yeah. What is the right age to get married? Here's a kid, 6 years old. He'll be divorced like 20 times, I gotta tell you. He says, no age is good to get married at. You got to be a fool to get married. And then, what do you think your mom and dad have in common? This is from Lori, age 8. Both don't want any more kids. Enough of them, right? Some of you have a few of these guys. I'll just give you one more or two because it was sort of. It's a, when is it okay to kiss someone? Who's Pam, age 7? I wonder what she's going to grow up to be. When they're rich. I mean, just think about that. You don't have to come to these dinners. You just stay on your yacht. You know, you don't have to worry about all this stuff. So, and then I'll have one more from Kelvin, age 8. He said, how would the world be different if people didn't get married? There'd be a lot of kids to explain what they are. So, anyway. So to get along and connect, the more you realize, what do we say? Everyone is different. The lower your stress level goes down, the more you get along with people, the more you connect with people. And I'll tell you, it's made a big difference in my life too, because I can deal with anybody anymore. It doesn't, whatever their views are on things, you just go with it. And I like this quote by Wolf Reinke, who said, oh, by the way, I'm not going to get into that. He said, we need to accept people the way they are, not the way we think they should be. And am I using myself as the gold standard? And otherwise, everything I do is right. Everything you do is wrong, sort of stuff. So again, to take a look at that part of it. So to get into some specific skills now, by the way, I'm moving relatively quickly here because what's the average attention span of an adult? I don't know. Somebody's asking, what's your name again? I don't know. No, anybody want to take a guess? According to the, pardon? 45 seconds is too long. Right? Oh, 45 seconds, somebody said? Nope, a little too much. No, keep going. This is according to the American Psychological Association. The average attention span of adults, 3 minutes is way too long. Milliseconds. Milliseconds. Actually, according to the American Psychological Association, average attention span, listen to this, it's literally about 8 seconds, which means people will listen to you longer, but you better have something they want to hear. It better be something they want to say. It better be something to connect with them. And by the way, what's the #1 key to popularity if you want to connect? Is to be what? Anybody want to take a guess on that? Funny, likable. Likable is key. Reliable, available, present. No. Rich. I better just tell you. Okay, there's almost and if again for converse, be interested, not just interesting. Be interested, not how many times do you go to talk to somebody and they just talk about themselves or they go off into this tangent and think about who you like the most sometimes. People who have connections like that. And it's not as easy. And I have a whole section in the book when you read it, if you're a little uncomfortable doing that, on overcoming shyness and all those things, there's a whole chapter in there on that. So something you may want to look at. Yeah, sure.
I don't know what you right. You're saying you've never felt that you're right.
Well, you want to convince them. It's how you convince them. It's. I think people get to yelling and screaming, and they're saying I'm right and you're wrong type of thing. So it's an edge there. But I mean, again, it's important to stand for right, but don't go ballistic. I guess on that type of thing, which I see a lot of people do, and they just anything anybody says or discounts it and the whole bit. And what do people want? They want to be valued. They want to be heard. They want to be understood. They want to be listened to. If you want to connect, just think of those keys right there. So let's talk about some specific skills in here. And if you do this, you'll get along with anybody. I mean, look at these. If these guys can get along, I mean, there's Scalia and Ginsburg, and I mean, they're opposite, total opposite. But guess what? They went on vacations together. They had dinner together. They ate together. They were the best of friends on the Supreme Court, but one was way to the right, one was way to the left, and they still got along. We're like here. I mean, if these guys can get along, that's, I always like that picture. And then furthermore, if these guys can get along, that was the one that amazed me the most out of all that stuff. According to the Cat and Dog Association, they were there too. So the bottom line of this whole thing is that the soft skills that we want to be, this is a I don't mean the touchy-feely stuff there, but equal really the hard results that you want. And the bottom line is your personality is your greatest asset. people, I just find the biggest problem I see in working with companies and organizations and leaders is 90% of the things I work on is their people skills and their personality skills. Because again, there was a study out of HR Magazine the other day that 80% of people, if they get one bad interaction or incident with their boss, even if they love their company, 80% think of, I'm just going to leave this place. So anybody ever that feeling sometime? You just want to, is it worth it? And that's just after one, interaction. So it's so important, when working with leaders, that's such a top area that people need to work on in that aspect of it. So with this in mind, I always like to say everything being equal, people deal with what? They deal with people they like and they trust. We all know that. But everything being unequal, they still deal with people they like and they trust on that case. And has anybody here ever worked for two bosses, for example? And one of the bosses is doing everything we're talking about tonight and 100 times more, the nicest person, they did everything right. And then the other one was sort of like arrogant, demean, I'll go into all the other adjectives there. And you're going to do your job because you have to do your job. But who are you going to do the extras for? Who are you going to go out of your way for? Who are you going to do the special stuff for? And it just really does make a difference in that case. For another example of this too, I was coaching a woman. This was at an engineering firm. She was in charge of the firm. I'm not mentioning any names of these places, but I was coaching her, and she had a vendor come in to sell something. And the vendor did, technically was brilliant. He had the right price, right product, right everything, great salesperson. But when he came in to talk to her, just picture this. She's sitting up here at the table. She had two men who worked for her right here and here. And when he came in to make the sale, guess who he looked at all the time? The men. He never looked at the woman in charge. And she said, she was very nice, because we're all nice, right, to people. She said, thank you. And he thought, oh my God, ace this, had the right price, right product, great salesperson. And she I wasn't there, but she banged the table and she says, I don't want anybody working with him or that company ever again. And again, we get into disagreements about that. I get people going off on tangents on this one. But people are human, and they're going to do what they want to do. And so I know people say, well, shouldn't they just take the best price? But then again, how many of you ever sit down with a contractor? I know some of you are contractors, but you sit down and you're thinking of hiring somebody. And what's the first thing that goes to a lot of people's heads? Well, do I want to work with that person for the next 5 years? Anybody ever thought of that? Besides all their qualifications and everything else, do I want to work with that person for the next 5 years or not? Because you're going to be seeing them a lot. So you have to think about that aspect of it. So what we're going to talk about now is how many of you heard of this moment of truth? None of you have heard of that? Just two of you? Did anybody go to school? No, just kidding. Just kidding. Moment of truth means that every time you have a meeting, a transaction, or an interaction with anybody, or a touch point with anybody, an impression is formed. And this can be positive or negative. It can help or hinder. It can make or break a relationship. And so what I want to talk about, have you do a little exercise here, is how can we make every interaction positive, memorable, and special? So if you remember that acronym, PMS, positive. Now, this is when I move on quickly. Yeah. This is when I just eat my dessert and shut up. But what I'd like you to do in the next few minutes, I want to do a little exercise here with on connection crushers. And for the people we're going to do a breakout with the people on Zoom, correct? On there. And for the people here, what I'd like you to do is I'm going to give you about 6 minutes. And first of all, can everybody in the group here, I know when you're on Zoom, you can't do this, but you need to pick a leader on Zoom. But here, if everybody could just, on your table, just point your finger in the air real quickly. You could point to the person in your group you want to be the spokesperson for your group. Okay, we got a spokesperson in our group. Okay. And tonight you won't be able to hit every spokesperson. But what I want you to do in your group, and the spokesperson needs to write these down. So at least your group will get some information. And I'm going to, as I go through a couple of groups, I'm going to key on some points you make. But what are some of the communication crushers, connection crushers? These are the traits, the behaviors that turn people off, the annoying things that turn people off. So for example, that I can think of right here would be no appreciation or mansplaining. I'll talk about that later. But or backstabbing or no empathy or you know, anything that's creating so that we don't connect and we don't communicate as well as we can. You know, bragging, name calling. I mean, these are some, don't write all those down because it should be your group. But the reason I'm doing this is that at the end of this, these are all like compatriots. What's the word on this? You guys are all in similar fields. And you want to, if you hear this and you hear it come up a lot of times, ask yourself, am I doing this? Because at the end of the night, what I'd like to do is what's one thing I'm going to change, adapt, do differently, keep doing the same, based on what I'm heard, not just with me, but from everybody in here. So can I give you about 6 minutes right now, if we can do that? Okay, so everybody at their table and who's ever the spokesperson needs to write these down. Okay, go. Yeah. No, you don't. So no matter how good you are, just get off the stage. So let me start. Actually, can I start with that group back there? Just what would you come up with real quickly so that we can work on? Yeah.
So the stuff we came up with was unrealistic questions that the person
Okay. Okay.
Arrogant.
Okay.
Fingerprinting,
And you what?
devil's advocate.
Devil's advocate. Okay. Good. Give them a hand. Okay. Let me get this group up here. What do you guys think?
With this,
Okay. By the way, when you say I'm interrupting you now. By the way, when you say interruptions, people hate, by the way, people hate being interrupted. Sensitivity, rapport, commitment are all killed. So a lot of times, what do you want to do? You want to take a deep breath before you're ready to interrupt. You ever have somebody who interrupts, and you never get anywhere? And did you ever interrupt somebody and they're saying the same thing you're saying, and it goes on. So just be very careful on that, because people hate people that interrupt. Since, on that. Pardon? Oh, the cell phone that goes off, especially when a cell phone goes off and you don't even pay attention to the other person. That's even worse. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. What do they have here? I'm sorry. Some of the things on this group: interrupting, inflexibility, reiterating your point over and over, talking over someone else, talking down to other people, unprofessional, talking over people. By the way, when you hear some of these things over and over again, ask yourself, because somebody's doing this stuff. So, you know, you got to look at yourself. Am I doing those things? And, you know, we're all doing these things, whether or not we like it or not. Hogging the conversation and not listening, which is a big thing. A lot of times we're not listening to really understand the other person, which is a big problem on that one. And hogging the conversation is ever somebody just, what happens when you go to a meeting and somebody just keeps going on and what do you tend to do? Right. And what do you want to do? You just say, I'm not getting involved. It's the heck with it. You know, it's not worth it. So it cuts off everything else in the conversation. So let me get one more table over here. Yeah.
We cracked your code about
Mansplaining. Okay. Does everybody know what mansplaining means? No, some of you don't. Does anybody want to explain it besides me? No.
How about the professional?
No, I'm sorry. Did you have a question?
I did want to ask, somebody was intended and unintended by a lot of things.
Yeah, go under mansplaining too. Okay, exactly. But mansplaining is where a man speaks to a woman like she's an idiot, sort of, so to speak. I'm just giving you a simple definition like that. And a good example is my wife the other day was, she was doing something at the sink, and we had a plumber come in, and there was something wrong with the sink, and the plumber goes, and the plumber says, well, you turn this little knob here, and it was really getting bad. And then the water comes out like this. And she didn't get it. I'm thinking, that's mansplaining. You know, I'm the one getting it, not her. But it was like amazing. You're not getting this. But it's something like that. Or going to a baseball game and say, well, they have a little ball, you hit it with a little blue bat. You know, it's talking to somebody like they're idiots, so to speak. I'm just giving you the simple definition for that. Let me just get one more over here. Round nose, okay,
Make the body language emotional,
okay.
disengagement, being loud, too aggressive, and someone like to end the sentence with right.
Right, okay. Right, yeah, I gotcha. Monologue, okay. And by the way, when you talk about that, when we said the attention span of an adult is really so, you need, I hate to tell you to be like sort of a motivational speaker in a way, but people's attention spans are so zilch that you really need to up that. I wrote a book also on presentation skills, and one of the things I work with is 90% of the people I work with on presentation skills training speak in a very monotone voice. And you need to punch out words, you need to emphasize key points. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but you got to get people to listen. Yeah.
We're virtually much more than we were before. And a lot of people don't spend the cameras on it. It's very hard to understand body language. Eye contact is difficult. Any advice on how to handle that, especially if you're speaking, you can't see someone wants to say something.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have an engineering firm I'm working with this week, and if part of the deal was they all had to have their cameras on. So I'm like, you can't pick up anything. It's very discouraging. And so some of the places I work with, they actually have rules that you have to have. They're making it the rule. I don't know if anybody has that in yours, where the cameras you have that cameras on, some of them. And I think people are hesitant to make people do that or not, but still, you've got to, it's not the best connection thing. I mean, the best connection is obviously in person, but there's nothing really you can do about that except having their cameras on and understanding the voice too. But you don't even know if anybody's there.
No.
Anybody ever have a meeting and is anybody even there?
They're on mute.
Yeah, they're on mute. They're on mute. They're walking the dog. I don't know what they're doing. Yeah.
I used to, maybe I still haven't interrupted, but I found one thing that helps me is to use the little hand raise.
Oh, yeah.
And that way my boss knows I'm.
Yeah, the hand raise.
Sometimes I wonder, why did you invite me to the meeting? I'm talking and I can't say anything.
Yeah, why am I here? Yeah, I don't know. That's a good one too. Anybody else have anything they want to mention on that? Yeah.
That's a funny thing. On the team instead, there was somebody who had their hand raised for 45 minutes.
Yeah. Well, anyway, those are some things. And anything else from the group there? Okay, well, that's for now. I'm going to just stick with but think about those things and ask yourself, what is one thing I want to change, adapt, do differently, keep doing the same on that. Some of you mentioned body language here, so let me skip a couple slides here. I want to get to how many of you heard this before? It's how you say it, not just what you say. Now, this would be more for in person, although when you're doing Zoom, when you can see people, body language makes a difference. Actually looking in the camera, for example, there's a thing called plexicam. Anybody heard of plexicam? It's a thing you put on your computer that you can actually move. I can look at your face instead of having to look in the camera. I don't know how to explain it, but it's plexicam if you want to look it up. PLEXICAM. And it's something where you can move the what's it called, the lens up and down, but you can move it right next to somebody's face. So you know how it's so strange just looking at a camera and you don't really connect with anybody. Here I can actually look at you and the camera's right there. So I can move the camera around. So think about that. But from a perspective of working together, how many of you heard of this before? It's how you say it, not what you say. And there was a statistic done years and years ago, and I'm questioning the numbers on this. But anyway, just for sake here, they said that only 7% of the message that people hear from you are by the words you use, 38% by your tone of voice, and 55% was by your body language. So what they're saying is a large part of how people perceive you is your what? Your body language and your tone of voice. So especially on Zoom, tone of voice is a big part of that. So I want to give you a little acronym to make yourself more approachable, likable, and trustworthy so that actually you do connect with people. And I like to call this soften. And what would be, since body language is such a big part, what would be the S? Anybody want to take a guess what the S is? Smile. Excellent. Okay. And by the way, when I say smile, if you do not normally smile, don't start doing it all of a sudden. Okay. Just wear your mask all the time. That's the way. And then they won't know what's going on. Also, only smile when appropriate. You don't want to go around saying, "Hey, we're having layoffs around here." Don't. And as I was watching the news years and years ago, and I remember a guy came up and he, what was it? He was from, he was on the news and he said there were 5 deaths in pollution. He had this weird smile on his face because it was a nervousness, but that doesn't put the right message too. What would be the O? Anybody would take O, body language wise? Open, yeah. And when we say open, how many of you do this as a habit? Anybody do this? Okay, okay, just be very careful because the connotation of that is your what? Closed. It could be, let's say we get in a disagreement from each other, me against you at this point. So it actually escalates a problem instead of de-escalates it. What would be the F? Pardon? Friendly's good, flexible is good. I like yours better than mine, but I'm going to call it forward lean or focus. And forward lean doesn't mean this, doesn't mean leaning over when you're talking to somebody. But it's, and focus is, how many of you ever talk to somebody and they're all looking all around, but at you, just staying to the point of that people. And also this is important when you're on Zoom too. To make a point, you may want to lean forward. That can be picked up. And again, keep your eye on that camera as you're going. The T is what? By the way, this is all American culture. This does vary by culture. So just, I can't go into all the cultures today. Fine. Tone was good because that's 38%, but that's not it. No, yeah. Tall? We got to get taller here. You're real tall. Oh, talk. Talk. You got to talk to communicate. Good. I'm going to call it territory. That means getting into somebody's space. So, for example, I'm getting really close to Cynthia right now. She's kicking me under the table. Yeah, get off me. But in American culture, besides the 6 feet we have with COVID, in American culture, the ideal distance to be away from somebody is what? Before COVID. You're all right. It's actually about, there's a wide variety there. It's about 14 inches to 4 feet is the variety there. So, but you know anybody like this, and it could be you. How many of you ever known anybody that's right in your face? You step backwards and they don't get it. They just, all you picked up is what? Bad breath the whole time. You want to get out of there. So just be aware of that. The E is what? Energy. It's important to have energy. People, by the way, people are more convinced by your energy, enthusiasm, and conviction than anything else you do. So just be aware of that when you want to get the message across. But I'm going to call it something else. What do you do to show that people trust you? Empathy is important. Eye contact. Okay, and eye contact, by the way, does not mean staring at anyone either. There's a fine line between staring and stalking people. So you ever had somebody do that to you? They'd like, I mean, I get this sometimes when I'm doing these things and somebody just keeps looking at me the whole time and wonder, like, is your zipper down or what are they looking at? I don't get, but it does make people nervous. And the ideal time to keep your eyes on anyone is what? About 3 to 5 seconds. Again, different cultures. Yeah, different cultures, you don't even want to look in some people's eyes because that's disrespectful. So just be aware of that. And if you work with other cultures too, because I do work overseas a lot, and there's a book called Do's and Taboos of International Travel. And everything I'm talking about here is totally, a lot of times different. So I always read that every time I go to another country. And then the N is nice. Anybody from the other side have to say, okay, I'm going to call this, what do you do to show your, there it is, neutral, negotiable. I'm going to call it nod. And not nodding off, by the way. I know we're all tired all the time. And by the way, when you got to watch out that, yawning, for example, by the way, yawning is a physiological reaction. It doesn't necessarily mean you're tired. And people get the wrong impression when you actually are yawning. It's actually, anybody see that on 60 Minutes? It was like, anybody know what I'm talking about? It was they had a big thing on yawning Sunday morning, I think it was on CBS or something, about yawning not really being what you think it is, but what do people perceive it as? You're bored and you're all that. And by the way, there is a trick I learned. I do some work for NIH. I learned this from some scientists, and I don't know why it works, but everybody do this. Take 2 deep breaths. And if you take 2 deep breaths, for some reason, for about 20 minutes, you will not yawn. But yeah. Now, as soon as I say that, everybody yawns. I just, but they told me that. Yeah. Pardon? It's contagious. People pick it up on that area too. So, but anyway, some things to think about right there. So a couple of things I want to do right now too is I want to move. One of the things why we don't connect is we get into misunderstandings with people. Anybody here ever been misunderstood? Nobody? Okay, let's skip that one. because there's a lot of 600 words in English language with different meanings. We have all sorts of problems. Listen to this too. I heard this somewhere that 10% of Americans think Joan of Arc was Noah's wife. I said, well, isn't that true? So moving on. So what I want to do is I want to do a little exercise here to show you how to eliminate misunderstandings. And what I want you to do is there's a piece of paper on is there cards on each your table and pens? Okay, we have maybe if you can draw on the back of those cards or something. Oh. Yeah, so to say. Or if you have other paper anywhere around, or anyway, or if you're at home, you have paper at home. So here's what I want to do. I want to give you a way to eliminate misunderstanding once and for all. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read to you a list of 12 words. And when I'm finished, I want you to write them down in the order I said or as close as you can get. So right now, put your pens down. You don't want to write anything right now. But when I finish, I want you to write them down in the order that I said or as close as you can get. So here's the words, and I'm just going to say them once. The first word is night. The second word is rest. The third word is quiet. The fourth word is slumber. The fifth word is deep. The sixth word is NyQuil. The seventh word is snooze. The eighth word is restful. The ninth word is snore. The 10th word is sound. The 11th word is tranquil. And the 12th word is awake. So write those down in the order I said or as close as you can get. Everybody getting them? Sure. I can read body language here. There you go. How about everybody on Zoom? Oh, wait, they're not supposed to say anything then. Oh, they're not supposed to write it down. Okay, yeah. Jeez, cheat sheet. Okay, let me ask you a few questions. What was the first word on your list? How many of you had that by show of hands? Okay, what's the point behind that? If you want to be not to be misunderstood, the point behind that is what?
Could be either night, day, night.
Yeah, but it could be, the point behind it is the first thing you say is what people remember, because all of us got it. So if you want to get information out that people don't forget, don't go off on the tangents. My name's Arnold Sanow. I did this. Get to the point, because people remember the first thing you say. And you know how they remember the first thing and then they tune out and tune in and tune out. So anyway, let me ask you another one. How many of you had NyQuil on your list by a show of hands? Okay, almost everybody had NyQuil. And why did you get that? A lot of times in the middle of a conversation, I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm just not hearing anything at that point. So why did we tune into that one? What's the point? Significant? It's a brand name. And so brand didn't know till later. The list is different. Okay, here's the point I want to make. According to the American Psychological Association, about 60% of the public, and they use this on American public. The American public, what's the word you want to use? It creates a picture in their mind. So what happens is people are very visual. About 60% is very visual. So if you just talk in very intellectual words, a lot of people just tune out. You need to create a story or an example or an anecdote or something like, not an anecdote, but anecdote or something that relates to it. So put a picture, create pictures in people's mind that goes through it. Let me ask you another one. How many of you had awake on the list by a show of hands? Okay, where was that? And what's the point behind that one? Last thing you say is what people remember. So tonight, for example, when I say, now in conclusion, everybody will wake up. So, because they say, oh, it's almost over. And that's when you get your point across too. Because then here, in conclusion, here's the 3 things I want you to remember. And everybody will do that. So in the beginning, tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them in the middle with a story, anecdote, exercise, something. And then tell them again with a summary or something to that point. Let me ask you one more question. How many of you had sleep on your list? I mean, oh, a lot of you had sleep? Okay, I did not say the word sleep. I did not say it, but a lot of you got it. So what's the point behind that one? I know it's late, but besides that, why did so many of us get that when I didn't even say it? Right. And it all relates back. So what the thing that people come up with a lot, how many times you go to your office or someplace, or even your spouse or your partner or whatever, and they said, I told you that. No, you didn't. Yes, you did. No, you didn't. Yes, you did. Yeah, I swear I told you, and it goes on and on and on and on, because we think that.
Carol said you did say sleep.
She didn't say sleep. No, I didn't. She heard it. We can record it later, but well, I'll tell you, we had some similar, but we'll see on that. I need to be right. That's it. No. So anyway, and by the way, when we talk about these things, the reason you want to, and so when we talk about misunderstandings, one of the things that I want to mention here too is when you do your emails and stuff, one word can make a difference, right? You ever had something and you just got the total misunderstanding because you understood it one way or the other? And I want to show you some signs that made a difference on this one too. When I say made a difference, you tell me what these mean. This first one was coming into Washington, D.C. This was up a number of years ago, but it said, welcome to Washington, D.C., a work-free drug place. What does that mean? What did they screw up on that? A drug-free workplace. It's funny, I was up in Idaho a while ago, and everybody said, yep, that's what they do there. They work free and get drugs. Just depends where you go. All those people out there, they're just working free and get drugs. They thought, oh, that sounds right. Okay. But anyway, here was another one. I was working with a car dealer, and I had to redo the sign because I didn't take a picture at the time. But understand this, why go anywhere and get cheated when you can come here? How many times do we get misunderstandings? Or another one right there was danger falling rocks, handicap parking. I mean, these are real signs there. So, or here was one. This is one was sorry, we're open. Let's put that up there. I mean, these can have a lot of different meanings, right? Here was one that. Here's one to get rid of your kids. Soccer not allowed. Soccer may only be played in the archery range. You have kids running around back and forth. Isn't that great? Sort of stuff. Well, here's another one for Wall of China. It was like toilet is where over the wall. I mean, is that true? I can't believe they do that there. But anyway, and another one I'll just show you is I speak a lot at conventions and stuff too, and I was out in Las Vegas. This is years ago, and in Las Vegas they play dice. And what's the name for dice? Craps. And there was a sign there, and it was interesting. I was staying at the where was it? The Las Vegas Hilton, and it said "Welcome Arnold Sanow," and I thought that was pretty cool, because I'm on the sign there. I just want to show. Oh, this was Don't Worry, Kill You, church help, but I want to show you that was not the sign. See this where it says Ski Industries of America, as I was speaking at their meeting, it said welcome Arnold Sanow. Isn't that cool, right? But guess what it said underneath? It said craps in the lounge all night. So, and you know how you want to get a point on these things too? And I always ask the group, because you don't want to just give this stuff without a point, right? So this last group I asked, I said, what's the point behind this? The guy looks at me and says, the point is you have a problem. I said, okay, I think we're missing the whole thing here or there. So anyway, but okay. So what I want to do is, so with that in mind, and by the way, so those are the things. And here's one more. I just forgot about this. I saw this in a story the other day. Unattended children give an espresso and a free kitty. Has anybody seen that one? That's on every store I've ever been to. Yeah. So let me give you 6 key things really quickly to get everyone singing your praises and connect with anybody you want at this point. And first one is attitude. And when I talk about attitude, everything begins and ends with attitude. I don't mean to be touchy-feely here, but it does. Hyatt Hotel, I did some work for them a long time ago. And in Hyatt hotels, when they were going to hire people, if you went to an interview at a Hyatt hotel, if you did not smile at least 5 times in a 5-minute interview, you would not have a chance of even getting hired there. So, and then somebody asked me, they said, well, that's unfair. They should tell them to smile. And I said, okay, that's another class there. But a couple things I want to give you that's something that can help you to keep your attitude adjusted all times, because I think sometimes we shift. And by the way, when you do that, you're not connecting with anybody at that point. But the first thing is one exercise I did with National Dulles Airport about 15 years ago. We did something called the flip side exercise. And you may want to try this. I've done this with police departments. I've done it with engineering firms. I've done, you name it. And what it is, we gave everybody a little black book. And when something went wrong, you know, somebody yelled at me, what's the flip side? So they had to write it in there anytime they felt like they were getting grudges or something like that. And it really does help. So for example, let's say you hated your job. What's the flip side of hating your job? I got a job, okay? So I mean, you should be thrilled that you're even working. Let's say you put a dent in your new car. What's the flip side of that? I have a car. Okay, well, you have a good attitude. Let's say your husband or your wife, your girlfriend, or your partner just left on you. What's the flip side of that? Okay, I think you got a great attitude over there. I don't think you need to hear any more of this one. And then the other one is the other thing. So do the flip side. And then the second thing I would recommend is count your blessings. And when I say count your blessings, is ask yourself that. How many of you have ever done this just for curiosity? When something goes wrong, you ask yourself, what am I grateful for at this moment? Does anybody do that just for curiosity? A couple of you, you know, and it's because nothing, you know, like, okay, so, you know, the plane's not taking off, or well, let's say you're stuck in traffic. Anybody ever been stuck in traffic? Yeah. You know, and then what do? Instead of getting all upset about and shooting somebody, you do what? You like, you know, maybe I can listen to the radio longer. I can listen to my story. I have an excuse for not going to work on time, you know, whatever, on that point. So think of those two things, flip side, and what was the other one? The choose, I forgot what it was, count your blessings. Because I forgot to count my blessings today. So moving on, second thing is be reliable. And when I talk about be reliable, do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it, get it done on time. I always like this garbage company I worked with in Hawaii one time, and they had on their truck, it said, we guarantee complete satisfaction or double your garbage back. So that was a great one. Third thing is be responsive. Are you accessible? And asking yourself, are you accessible? Are you available? Are you willing to help people? And I think this is on, pardon, am I too loud now? Okay, I'm making a lot of noise there. Next thing is be credible. And what credible, do your employees, or do you express trust and confidence? And this is a big issue. Company I was working with just recently, we spent a whole day just on trust with all the members there and doing a whole facilitation on what does it take to get that going. Next thing is appearance. The old saying, don't judge a book by its cover. What does everybody do? They judge by a book by its cover on this. And this could be your body language, it could be your tone. It becomes how you come across. And then the last thing on there is empathy. And empathy is a big one, by the way, too. When I talk about empathy, we've all heard the saying, walk a mile in my shoes. Everybody heard that one before? But I'd like to take it a step further. You may want to do this. Before you walk a mile in my shoes, you need to take off yours first, because then you really, truly can't understand. And just to give you an example of this, too, and I'm not getting political or anything, but anybody remember Colin Kaepernick? He was a football player. Everybody know what I'm talking about? Okay, and Colin Kaepernick was like bending on a knee at a football game, and all of a sudden people did two things. They either said, that's good, that's bad, that's good, that's bad, but nobody really did what? They never understood, why is he doing that in the first place? So again, it's understanding. When you talk about communicating, connecting, it's understanding others in that aspect of it. And by the way, don't do fake empathy either. What I mean by fake empathy, and this hit me, there was a woman in one of my sessions, and she came up to me and she said, I'm really sorry, I've not been paying attention in the class. And I said, and then she said, because I had this really bad pregnancy. And guess what I said? I said, I can understand. And she looked at me and she was really direct. She said, you do not understand. So that's what I mean by fake empathy. Don't do that. And I learned a lesson that way. I didn't have to take any class for that one. I learned very quick. So the question is, I'm going to leave you with a couple things here. Because before I end, as I said, I will give you, everybody, I will send a summary of this to everybody, because I'm going to get your name. And by the way, I'm going to give you a book. I'm going to actually give you I have a 2-minute tips thing that goes out that people use for training, but stuff like that. You can just push unsubscribe if you don't want to do it, because I understand that too. But the book you'll like, and again, if I see those sold on eBay tomorrow, I'll know it came from somebody in here. So I will know that at the point. Also, if you have any questions or things later, you can call me. I have a card up here. I'm one of the few people who still has cards, believe it or not. But you know, if you have questions or comments, or you need a speaker or trainer, just let me know on that one. So I'd like to leave with this quote, a couple things on here. First of all, Maya Angelou, I always like what she said, and some of you, a lot of people know this quote, but nope, I'm not going to go into that. People will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, and when you really want to talk about connecting, they'll never forget how you made them feel. And the reason we don't connect a lot of times is because we don't value people, we don't listen to people, they don't hear us. I mean, we don't hear them, we don't understand them, and it always boils down to this aspect of it. And I'll leave you with one more quote too, which I will again send to you, but Mahatma Gandhi said, we have a number of constituencies. We have our, and I like to say the best people, when I talk about connecting, tend to be nurturers. And again, I don't mean to be touchy-feely about that, but when we talk about that, we have a number of constituents. We have our coworkers, we have our customers, we have bosses, subordinates, family, and friends. And there's an old saying, everyone is a plant, like a plant in the garden. And if you don't water and feed them, they're not going to grow. So I'm going to leave you with this tonight, and I'll be around if you have any questions. But he said this, he said, keep your thoughts positive, because your thoughts become your words. Keep your words positive, because your words become your actions. Keep your actions positive, because your actions become your habits. Guard your habits and keep them positive, because your habits become your values. Keep your values positive, because your values become your destiny. And he ended up by saying that every day is a new beginning, and you must always remember that the nurtured seed always produces the abundant harvest. So again, I want to thank you for having me. Anybody wants my dessert, you can have that. And I will be around, but thank you very much. And I will put that. That was fun.
Okay, for those who didn't doodle all over their note card, on the back of a note card, there was regret, parentheses P. Does anyone have that? If you flip it around. On the note cards. No, oh, we have a winner. Okay, so Daniel Pink, our 2018 keynote speaker, released a book yesterday on the power of regret, and he started a world regret survey that he ran through his website, and 17,000 people shared their biggest regrets, and of those 17,000, 7,000 agreed for follow-up interviews. So that's his research group, and like other Daniel Pink books, it's really narrowing down on that research. So we have a signed copy of the book that will go to Miss Rogers, our secret raffle winner. So. And for all the Zoom people who are saying, where's my raffle item? We'll just encourage you to, once you feel comfortable and safe, to potentially join us in 2022 and raffles go. So, and now closing remarks from our president, Charlie Geis.
I want to thank you all for coming. We're going to continue the $10 meals. So I'd like to see you come back. Drive carefully. Thank you.
This also speaks to the need to